Now, our new guest, our fresh guest tonight is Steve Dickson, the former One Nation leader in Queensland, of course, former senior cabinet minister in the Newman government. Now, of course, Steve Dickson was embroiled in that controversy where Al Jazeera did a sting, followed him and James Ashby around the United States. He ran for council recently on March 28 in the Sunshine Coast area. Only just missed out. He's currently writing a book. Steve Dickson, thanks for joining us tonight on Sky News Across Australia. What have you been doing since that ill-fated trip to the United States?
Peter, it's pretty unusual that you say that because it's almost 1 year to the day. I think the federal election was on the 9th of May last year, and look where we are today. The world has changed so dramatically. I think my little story going back a year ago is, paled in significance to the coronavirus.
All right, so you're writing a book. What are you going to say in that book about that particular episode?
Well, Peter, I'm going to lay it all on the table. I mean, at the end of the day, we didn't ask for any money in the United States. We were absolutely set up by a Middle Eastern news agency who paid 2 agents to basically interfere in Australian politics, and that matter is still being looked at by the federal police as we speak. So I'm hoping for a positive outcome, and it'd make a great finish to the book. But my ghostwriter at the moment has been pretty crook for nearly 6 months, and we are going to get that book out. I'm very much looking forward to delivering it. But Pete, there's so much going on in the world, and it's a pleasure that, to be back on your show, to be on Sky News, because there's so much happening out in the world, particularly as far as politics is concerned.
Would you never say never to having another crack to getting into state politics?
Well, Peter, I've had a number of people actually ask me whether or not I'm going to run in the next state election here in Queensland. I had a journalist from the Courier Mail probably said through the window here a moment ago, asked me the same thing. Who am I going to run for if I'm going to run? But I am very much considering that at the moment. It's what I do. I'm 58 years old. I feel like I can contribute a whole lot more to the future of our state and the future of our country. And mate, it's not over yet. There is a long, long way to go. And, there's so much going on in the world, Peter, but we need to make Queensland strong. We need to make Australia strong. And I think the simple recipe is cheap energy, cheap water, and we need to start manufacturing again, something we haven't done in this country for a long time. We've become way too reliant upon China. And on that topic, I'd love to hop into that one.
All right, I'm going to ask you about China. That was my next question. There's been a lot of controversy about the way in which China has obfuscated, has laden this whole issue around whether the virus came from a bat at a wet market or whether it came from a man-made laboratory. What are your thoughts on the Chinese, and should they fess up on exactly what's happened here?
Well, Peter, the first word that comes to mind is compensation for the world. I mean, China is a very wealthy country. They've done extremely well out of Australia with the exports that we've been sending them, turning our raw iron ore into metal and sending it all over the world, selling it back to us and many other countries. They use our coal. I think they've done very well. And don't get me wrong, I really like the Chinese people, but the Chinese government has to fess up. They have to take responsibility, and they need to start paying compensation to the whole world, because this thing has come out of China. I mean, if you look at the middle ground on this, it's either come out of a lab in Wuhan, it's either come from the fresh meat market, or it's intentionally done. So I'm going to go for the bet in the middle. Maybe they've done it by mistake. Maybe it's escaped from the lab over there. But one thing I'm absolutely sure of, China should be paying compensation to Australia, and it should be paying compensation right throughout the whole world. And I think the Prime Minister's right. We've got to know where it come from. That should be looked into. And anybody trying to stop that, it's got to be a conspiracy if they're trying to stop the world finding out where this disease started.
All right. The economy, that's what everyone's talking about at the moment. The language has shifted. We've flattened the curve. What does this present to Australia? What does this present to Queensland as far as opportunity around resetting where we're at when it comes to manufacturing, when it comes to building dams, when it comes to building nation-building projects?
Peter, I think this is an opportunity, and I think my grandfather used to say to me regularly, it's not a bad wind that doesn't blow you some good. The opportunity we now have got, Australians have realised how reliant we are upon China and other countries. It's about time we started looking after ourselves. And I'm going to give Christine Keneally a tick in the box. When she came out and spoke about immigration, and Peter, I've been a very, very strong advocate relating to immigration for a number of years, it's about time we started looking after Australians first. And I don't mind people come from other countries, but the truth of the matter is we've got to look after the people here. We need to start manufacturing again. And it gets back to what I spoke about a couple of moments ago. Cheap water and cheap energy. Unless the government can start investing in those things and call them an essential service again and deliver them cost neutral so that people get the benefit, businesses get the benefit, it will solve the majority of problems in this country. You ask any business what's costing them money. It's going to be energy, it's going to be water, and those two things alone will be a ticket to prosperity. I mean, the Bradfield scheme, I've heard the LNP has come out and it's their idea to build the Bradfield scheme. God bless them, I'll work with anybody, but, you know, a lot of people have spoken about the Bradfield scheme. We went to the election at the last election with our lead policy, building the Bradfield scheme. Everybody said it was crazy, but it's still a good idea today as it was back in the 1930s. I mean, drought-proofing Australia. You know, think about the benefits. You know, we've got a country that can fit most of Europe inside of it. So why not take advantage of that? And I think that's what we need to do. Become manufacturers, supply cheap energy, supply cheap water, and we're on the road to prosperity. But now's the time to do it. If it's good enough for the government to borrow $320 billion, spend $90 billion, I think they're going to waste it on submarines. Punch it into the economy, build power, build dams and infrastructure, and that's going to create jobs along the journey as well. So we win, win, win all the way through, and then we win for the next 50, 100, 200 years into the future.
Steve Dickson, sounds to me like you're warming up for a tilt on October 31. Thanks for joining us tonight on
Pete,
Sky
thanks for
News
having me in
Australia. Always
Australia.
a pleasure to have you on the show.
We're blessed to be here.